Well, we've heard quite a lot over the past several years about the inability to communicate wisely about the advances that are happening in this fantastic field of quantum technology. And so this panel is going to try and explore some of this, in particular, at a time when we're seeing, as evidenced by the panel in front of us, enormous activity from major companies that are really pushing the frontiers of what we're able to do in quantum technology, influencing the way that we live in all sorts of ways. And the challenge is to work out how to communicate wisely in this sort of area without hyping it up. Those of you who managed to get here early enough heard my quotes from Lord Kelvin, which was the opposite end of the spectrum, where Kelvin was a sort of naysayer of so much. The balancing act between the enthusiasm for the transformative power of the technology and the realism about how long it's going to take to do things of quantity is what this panel is going to explore. And because we've got really distinguished people from the quantum industry, we've got people who know about how to build processors. We've got people on the panel who know how to run the error correction syndromes and so on. All of these are making fantastic advances in the field. How do we get this over? Now, I'm going to repeat something. I was at a Mansion House dinner with Karina once, where the incoming Lord Mayor of London, on the day of the announcement of the Nobel Prizes to Zeilinger, Aspey, and Clauser, stood up and said, quantum is fantastic. It's going to permit instantaneous communication. And I thought, uh-oh, he's sitting next to me at dinner. What do I say? Okay. Now, the enthusiasm for the general public in quantum is actually part of the reason that we have to worry about hype. Okay. So that's what we're going to explore. I think we are, as technologists, realists in what we're trying to do, communicating that realism in a form that gets over to the general public. And we're going to look at where the challenges are, where these amazing developments for the four people on this panel are developing at the moment. And they're going to run through some of the challenges that they believe their technology will enable the world to change, and what that will then do for us, and how do you communicate it appropriately. So rather than introduce everybody, what we decided we were going to do is to run through the panel and really then give everybody 3 minutes to do their core thoughts on this one, and then we'll open it up a bit more. So I'm going to start with Sophie down the end on this one, and then we're going to work down through the panel. So 3 minutes. What is it that you think we really need to get over about how your technology is going to transform the world? How do we do it appropriately?
So it sucks going first because I don't know how the rest of my panelists will address this. But the way I think about this is, over the past cycle, last 10 years or so, we have sort of seen how AI transformed the world. And what we saw was similar stories where, hey, there's this AI winter has creeped up on us, there's over-enthusiasm in the system, and then lo and behold, eventually we had the ChatGPT moment, which essentially changed the world. So quantum is going through a similar story where we have lots of progress, rapid progress, and we are learning how to share it. We have an incredible obligation in front of us to share it wisely so that we don't over hype the system up and cause for a quantum winter. But then in the same vein, we cannot be silent about the progress either, because eventually we are a private enterprise and we have shareholders, and our shareholders want to know what you all are working on. So we have this obligation to over communicate where we are, and we have to do that. So it's finding the right balance between communicating where we are and also not essentially causing an overhype cycle. It's a tremendously difficult problem because the subject is complicated. Most people don't understand quantum the moment you start talking about fidelities. so then you sort of have to figure out how to up-level the story to a point where people can understand. And I think we're all learning on this together. But I'm confident seeing how the AI folks handle that problem, that we too will successfully handle this problem.
That's a really good start on this one. So I'm going to turn now to Dean Kessman from IonQ. Dean, your view on some of the challenges that we all face now on this.
So the question kind of resonates very deeply with me. My wife is a journalist, a science writer, in fact. And so her entire career has been spent trying to communicate difficult concepts and impact to the non-expert. And so this is something that started with my graduate thesis in terms of just starting, like, how do you drive that storytelling? How do you drive, the, I would say, regulation of expectations? And so the reality is, as Zulfi said, in AI, we see it in quantum, is there is a continuous spectrum of development that's happening in academia, in the commercial sector, in the government sector, where there's small advancements. Some are public, some are not public. Those advancements move the needle forward to where over time there is continually more and more understanding of the technology, but there's still a huge, I would say, barrier to the wider public understanding the impact. And so it behooves all of us to become storytellers, to be able to communicate what the impact is of the chemistry in terms of people, in terms of health, in terms of finance, in terms of their everyday life, to be able to describe and communicate why this matters. Because at the end of the day, we as an industry will succeed or fail based off of our ability to tell that story.
Very wise. Thank you. Now I'm going to turn to Mark. Mark Jackson. It says senior quantum evangelist. I know what happened to at least one evangelist, so maybe we won't go there from Quantinuum. But Mark, your thoughts on this?
Yes. Just for the record, evangelist in Greek means bringer of the good news. So that's where the term comes from. It was kind of popularized at Apple Computer in the 90s. So the thing is, quantum is amazing, and quantum computing in there. And so it's a shame that there is sometimes hype and exaggeration. And I think the most egregious example of this is when some groups boast about the number of qubits without any indication of the quality of the qubits. And to put this in perspective, it would be like if an airline company bragged that they had built a jumbo jet which seats 1,000 passengers, you would be very impressed. And then in the small print it says, but our engines are only powerful enough to lift 6 people off the ground. It's a bit like that, because it's not just the quality, not just the number of qubits, it's the quality. And so this is why 6 years ago we said we're going to use the quantum volume as a metric of the performance. And we promised that we would increase this by a factor of 10 every year for the next 5 years. And we did. So as I mentioned this morning, yesterday kind of concluded this, and that we were able to deliver on this promise. And last year, in collaboration with Microsoft, we actually achieved 12 logical qubits. And so we're actually starting to do things with our quantum computer. And so I think in terms of reducing hype and building trust, like technical things like that, technical metrics, being precise about these things help a lot. And then in terms of dealing with journalists and such, only announcing things after we've actually done them, not just what we intend to do. I think this helps a lot.
Great. Thank you very much on that one. Now I'm going to turn to Maria Maricu from Riverlane, who is actually very much involved in the company working on error correction. Over to you.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you. So I would agree with everything that was said, and to stress that progress is being made in quantum computing in the industry. And I feel like in the last year we've seen tremendous progress on all fronts. So the QPUs are getting bigger and better. And we had the most recent announcement yesterday. We've seen that the companies are now starting to move slowly away from NISC, embracing error correction and driving also this movement. We now have tens of logical qubits to play with. We've actually seen the power of error correction. We've seen that when the qubit, the patch of the physical qubits gets bigger, when we correct them, their quality goes up. So that's remarkable. I think that what is not coming across, maybe outside of quantum, is how all these milestones fit in the path to the end, which is having a useful quantum computers who can solve intractable problems, who can actually help move the needle for everyone. And I think maybe we are very good at, the quantum ecosystem, very good at describing these individual milestones, but not so good as helping others who are not in the ecosystem make sense of what do they actually mean? Why is it important that we have 48 logical qubits or 12 and not just one? Why is it important that we can do real-time error correction? Why is it important that we are now below threshold? So what does it mean? So I would say we are missing this compass or framework so that people outside can assess these milestones and also help them see the bigger picture, that they are really the next building block that we are missing to get to the end. And I would also agree on the importance of metrics that we all agree on. There are various metrics, and depending obviously on the maturity of the machines, they are changing. One of them is quantum volume. We and some others are advocating for quantum operations. So how many reliable quantum operations a quantum computer can actually sustain. And it would be good if we all agree on a metric that actually encompasses all the small metrics that we work with, the fidelities, the number of logical qubits. And we feel, for example, that for now, quantum operations is a good metric that encompasses all that.
So I'm looking at some of the questions on Slido, and there's some good ones that we can propel the discussion with. Over the centuries, the way the scientific enterprise has actually worked is by scrutiny of evidence, and in particular, making sure that you know what is the basis by which claims are made. I'm a fellow of the Royal Society here in London, where the motto is nullius in verba, take no man's word for it. Okay? Now, the scientific enterprise has mainly worked by publication and scrutiny. But at a time when there is economic value from the product, one doesn't want to reveal one's hand too early in this one. So I wonder, one of the Slido questions is should companies promote more use of journal publication data and preprints to improve honest communication in the industry and beyond? And I think that's where this balancing act is, of protecting your intellectual property so you can proceed, while still putting out data which allows evaluation. So I don't know who wants to contribute to that particular Slido question.
I can go first. So I think I think nobody will disagree with the notion of publishing data and providing peer-reviewed research. But the balancing act is complicated because the purpose of the peer-reviewed research is to essentially replicate your results, and which is fantastic for scientific advancement. That's how the whole scientific advancement engine works. But in the case of for-profit corporations that invest billions of dollars in the act of producing something, giving out the recipe in a publication is an extremely difficult ask. And so often what we at Microsoft will do is we like to put a lot of distance between the paper and where the actual program is at. So that's the way we have been trying to sort of balance out the equation where, and then again, there's interesting thing about the peer review process also has to start changing, because it takes about a year after the data is submitted for the paper to come out. So the program just moves on from that point. So the speed of innovation is no longer in sync with the with the process that has been defined over the last few decades. So adjustments have to be made. And I think they'll naturally get made. And I think we're going through, it's kind of like the new world order is being created. It's messy and it'll get better. But we're going through the mess right now. That's the way I see it.
Sophie, thank you for that.
Yes. So at Quantinuum, we publish extensively. I believe at current count, we've had about 200 publications, both in the hardware and the software side. We obviously don't publish everything we do. We have to keep some secrets, but we publish extensively. And in particular, whenever we make an announcement about hardware progress, like I just did, we also publish all the benchmarks. So we publish an article with everything in detail of exactly how we arrived at that. And then we even go an extra step. We actually ask independent third parties to verify this. So for example, we've had a very fruitful collaboration with JP Morgan Chase, and we've asked them to verify everything. So they can run software and do all the benchmarking and everything themselves and confirm everything we've claimed. And so yes, there does need to be a balancing act, but I think we've really gone overboard demonstrating what we've done and being open about that.
Yeah, thank you. Maria?
Yeah, so similar. So this is a funny question for me because I used to be a journal editor in my previous life. So I was, that time, exactly as it was mentioned, it was all about reproduction, all the data has to be out there. And now I'm in kind of the other side where I'm trying to, commercialize quantum technologies, which the two things are a bit at odds. But I think the reality is that still quantum computing has to balance both things. And I think this is what most companies are actually trying to do. On one hand, the scientific scrutiny should happen, and it should be there because there are still some technological breakthroughs that need to happen for us to get to the end. But on the other hand, the companies, yes, they do have to protect their IP and make sure that they have everything they need to commercialize it in the future when the time comes. I think I dare predict that still for the years to come, it will be a balancing act for the two. Yeah.
So it's interesting. IonQ has traditionally taken a little bit more, I guess, conservative approach in publishing. But we do have, similar to what Sophie was saying, is internal, very healthy conversation about when we publish, what we publish, the timing of that. We have IP disclosures, patent disclosures, kind of embargo periods for when the work is done to when we decide to make those published. But it's interesting in quantum in terms of the desire for the publishing, right? In past lives, that's not necessarily the industry norm in other industries, right? It's actually quite not. For example, like the X-37 program for NASA, they were trying to drive a first landing of a vertical rocket to space and back. NASA failed. It goes back to the Lord Kelvin example you gave this morning, is that like the best experts on Earth said, sorry, it's not going to happen. And then what did Jeff and Elon do? They just did it. Did they publish about it? Nope, they just did it, right? And so sometimes, the proof is just in the pudding. If you can build it and demonstrate the capabilities, then that's just a different path. I think both are viable paths. Mm-hmm. And so there is a balancing act that you need to do.
Right. Now, I'm paraphrasing some of these questions that are coming up on Slido. Because all four of you are working very much in terms of hardware connected with the software control systems, the degree to which your companies then engage with end users of the technology, people who are working perhaps in fintech or in drug discovery or whatever, what is your view about how to approach this business of realism in the way that your hardware or your technological developments can couple with the desire of the end users? I wonder if we could pursue that one for a moment. Working out where the use cases are in a way that is in partnership with the users rather than thrusting out there and hoping for the best. Yeah.
So, the best thing any of us can have are users. Like at the end of the day, working with customers is the best interactions that drive and shape your product, your software, your hardware. And so we have an amazing collaboration with ANSYS to be able to drive the use of quantum in their overall development pipeline. And so they have an impact simulation tool. It's called LS-DYNA that is used in many different industries. Automotive, we used it back at Blue and other places. And as part of that computational pipeline, you have to be able to decompose very large meshes into a set of linear equations that you then need to reorder. That reordering is a graph partitioning problem. Quantum is actually quite good at that graph partitioning problem. And so being able to interact with the customer, being able to interact and understand how they're solving that problem leads to novel and unique ways of posing the problem as well as solving the problem. The same goes for whether you're doing drug discovery, working with end users and understanding the kind of chemistry, the kind of simulations has benefited us tremendously in our ability to work through and understand how to drive improvements in our machine, improvements in our software stack, our compiler, and our architecture.
Yeah, this is important. Absolutely, I agree that it's very important for us to know who we are developing the machines for. If we develop them in vacuum and we just hand them over, they will be useless. So obviously, the sooner we understand the workflows that we are trying to have an impact on, this would feed into the way we tailor the machines and we develop them. And I'm talking about the whole quantum industry here. It's, again, a balancing act, though, because on one hand, we want to keep the engagement going with the industries. On the other hand, we have to make it clear that we do not right now have the machines that will have the impact that maybe they are wishing for. So I think it's important that the collaborations are built on honesty in a way, and that we understand that we have to work together to get somewhere, to get in a useful place. Because building a quantum computer is very, very hard. So unless it's really useful in the end, what are we doing?
Yeah. So at Quantinuum, we've had dozens of commercial projects spanning all the areas. So material science, pharmaceuticals, machine learning, cybersecurity, and so forth. And for each of those projects, of course, there's a scientific and a business negotiation because we want to make sure that we're perfectly aligned on each step. Historically, we had to be very careful about managing expectations, and we were very sure to explain to the customer, you will not see an advantage immediately, and it may be a few years, because there's often kind of a misunderstanding that they could just run their software on a quantum computer and it's 1 million times faster, and let's do that tomorrow. It's much, much better now because we've made so much progress. So, for example, later this year, we'll introduce our Helios machine with 50 logical qubits. We're really on the verge of having these practical commercial applications. So it's a much easier conversation now, but we still have to manage expectations to make sure they know what they're getting into.
We at Microsoft have taken a slightly different path. The way we have positioned our efforts around the platform is to explain that the quantum machine always has to work in tandem with a classical computer and also has to have a very powerful AI agent associated with it. So the interaction with the customers are, look, the quantum machines today will not offer the kind of value that you're expecting. But the classical pieces do, and all of this system works together. So the type of applications that our customers are starting to work on is most of the workload runs on classical, but they confirm the answer or chemistry calculation on the quantum machine. It's a great step forward, but it's not the end game. And that's the way we sort of have been working with our customers. And it's largely something that gives them value and keeps us engaged and keeps them engaged. So which is a complicated problem. You don't want to be stuck in the realms of research with our customers. You want to start working in the main business lines, and this is the best way we have found that enables us to do that.
Yeah. So there is an interesting story. Like right now, this may be controversial, but I believe there's value right now, right, in terms of what we as an industry are delivering. It's, the value of engaging with, the scientific researchers, value engaging with commercial industry, right? If you divided the CTOs of the world into three buckets, there's going to be those that are forward-leaning, the third of them that are trying to say, we need to invest in quantum to understand its use case. I want to understand how it's going to impact my business. There's going to be a third that are like, nope, not touching it. And then a third that need to be convinced, right? And so right now, all of the work that IonQ is doing, that we're driving, is trying to, it's one thing to work with the first third of CTOs. We're trying to work with the second third to bring value and demonstrate that. And that is very much through customer interaction, driving value. And as a result, that's what drives, for us as a commercial entity, sales on our cloud platform, system sales, consulting engagements, right? Government contracting, right? From a commercial entity, we are trying to interact, listen to the customer, and use what we hear to improve what we're doing, improve our applications capabilities, and push that forward. So I believe there is value now.
Good. Again, going to paraphrase a query here. Because all four of you are working in areas where there's been huge advances over the past 18 months in moving from physical qubits to logical qubits, demonstrating error correction, the journey towards fault tolerance is now much closer in terms of a destination than it had appeared not that long ago. So the curiosity from the general public is growing. So how do we communicate best with the general public via journalists to express our enthusiasm for the way that the field has changed so dramatically? Often we speak in the languages very different from the general public. So what's your view about how to get the excitement of the world we're suddenly in and the journey towards fault tolerance to people who have no idea what on earth fault tolerance is? So who wants to start on that one? Go on, Maria, have a go at it.
Yeah, it is hard. This is my old journal editor self-battling the hype. There is definitely a lot of excitement, it's true. And as I was saying earlier, I think maybe this excitement is not coming across in the absolute right way. I think there is maybe the need for a certain level of education explaining how all these amazing milestones that we are all reporting, how do they all come together in simple terms as possible, if possible. And of course, we would be helped when the machines, when we reach this inflection point that we call the megaquop. So reaching 1 million quantum operations, have machines that can sustain that, and then really showing to everyone, not exactly how it works, because maybe that's not really what we need to communicate, but what it can actually do.
We have to be succinct now. We've got 1 minute, 23 seconds.
I would never use the phrase fault tolerance when I was communicating with the general public. I would just try to correct their typical misunderstanding about quantum is just faster, and it's not, that it's a completely different type. The best metaphor that I found is like noise-canceling headphones, that it makes the incorrect answers go away and it reinforces the correct answer.
Right.
I would
Last
totally
chance,
agree.
yeah?
I mean, that's spot on. Like, they're interested in what it does for them. I would never bring up, fault tolerance.
Right.
I think you all covered it really well. It's all about the storytelling done in a way that is relatable to people. Fault tolerance, error correction, these are words that are complicated for most people. So we have to work on that.
Yeah, so working with journalists to interface with the general public is something that we're all keen to work more on. And I think this panel has already demonstrated that the technological leaders that we have in front of us are really conscious of the importance of doing just that. We now have 17 seconds left. Thank you so much, panel members. Thank you for those who put the Slido comments on. There are many more that we could have covered, but thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.